Hey, welcome back, everybody. We are so excited to have Dr. Sean Ross with us today. And typically, we talk about Capture, Curate, Share. We have the various modules that we have, and this specific module is going to be about PLCs. But we want to take it into an entirely different direction. So,
Mhm.
PLCs is all about building your professional learning community, or your PLN, your professional learning network. But what we really want to know is, who are the people inside of a PLC? What are their key attributes? What strengths do they bring to the table? What are their characteristics? So getting to know people better, that's the goal. So sometimes we walk into meetings and we don't know who the people are on a personal level, even at a professional level, because it's just a meeting about an agenda. So we really want to know people, and Dr. Sean Ross is going to walk us through how high functioning organizations leverage some of these tools to get to know the folks better and to really engage with each other and in the learning process and in the mission and the vision of the organization. So we are just so honored to have Dr. Ross with us. He has worked with municipalities, organizations, police, fire, EMT, community organizers, school districts, from the superintendent's office all the way to the classroom level. So just a well respected individual, well respected across the country for what he does. And we're just happy that he can share some of this with the educators in Kentucky and the Kentucky Department of Education.
Mm.
And we're so grateful that Kentucky Department of Education is going down this route. Dr. Thomas Woods Tucker and the entire organization there definitely forward thinking, and their number one goal is to personalize the experience for kids and their families. And I think you have some tools that can help us with that
Yeah.
today. So, Dr. Ross, take it away, please, sir. And just give us a little bit more background about who you are, what you do, how do you work with folks, how do
Mm.
you engage with people, and you, for whatever reason, have amazing results and a dynamic impact on people and their community.
Mhm.
So, please share some of that with us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Dr. Sampson. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Always a joy to get to share some time, a stage, whatever you want to call this, virtually, whatever. Sharing time with you is always a joy. So thank you for having me. Thanks for inviting me into this space. Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to present, share shed some light, specifically around some tools that we use when we get the most out of our people, right? We have to be able to figure out how we're going to strike a balance. We have to figure out how we're going to put these teams together, especially when, as you were talking in the intro there, talking about these learning communities or professional learning communities, and how we strike that balance, how we find that balance. Was not by accident. It can't be by accident. It has to be intentional. It has to be targeted. So when you ask a little bit about my background, I'm a team sports guy, right? I've got a background in team sports. I've all through high school, played in college, played football in college. I was fortunate enough to do that, and then went on to start coaching. And through all that, those dynamics of people, those dynamics of kids, those dynamics of the individuals that I had the opportunity to continue to engage with, was always something that intrigued me, always something that piqued my interest, and always had me trying to improve and get better. So as I moved through my trajectory as an educator, started off in a secondary school, moved into administration. But again, that whole time was tapping into individuals, tapping in how you build those relationships, how you build those networks, how you continue to connect and collaborate, because that's what makes us us, right? We've got this opportunity as humans to be social, and that opportunity to provide that level of increased social engagement is a wonderful tool that we call DISC. This DISC profile is really what we're going to be talking about tonight. So when you look at this idea of using DISC to build a professional learning community, a community of common purpose, it starts with that idea of being intentional. It starts with that idea of being targeted with what we want and how we want to get those results. And a lot of times in our schools, a lot of times we get the opportunity to bring different folks into these spaces, but we're not really sure what they're bringing to the table. We may not be sure how they're going to communicate with us. We may not be sure how they're going to handle conflict. We may not be sure about what they might want to commit to, or what levels of accountability they might want to have. Or sometimes we're even unclear on the results that we're trying to get. And this profile, this tool is really intended to help us move along that path a little more purposefully and a little more intentionally. As I said, I've been working with state, local, federal governments, had an opportunity to work with school systems really across the country, law enforcement agencies across the country in our work. But by and large, it really is about the people. It's about those relationships, about understanding those individuals that make up our organizations, right? Because our organizations are living, breathing organisms, and what we do in our line of work is really sort of mold and manage those organisms to be able better to deliver the results that we're seeking and how we're seeking those results. Really fortunate that I've had the opportunity to work with my father. He's been doing this work for the better part of 30 years. And, from my perspective, there's nothing better than to be able to work with your dad, work in a family business, and be able to connect and grow that relationship on and beyond sort of that father-son. But now you're in that professional space too. And even that dynamic provides a level of insights as we continue to deliver these tools like the DISC profile, because we have to learn to manage our professional dynamics. We have to learn to manage our conflict. We have to learn to manage what we understand to be accountability. And then, of course, you add the father-son dynamic to that. That always makes it a little more tricky, a little more fun, if you will. So not always, but most of the time. So really kind of looking at how we want to launch this thing, right? Anytime you get into an initiative, anytime you're going to pull people together, anytime you're going to ask people to take a seat at the table, whether it's for a professional learning community, whether it's for a professional learning network, whether it's a team of administrators, whether it's a teacher going into a classroom, whatever that might look like, you're always going to bring people together. There's always opportunity to bring folks together, whether you're bringing the family engagement team onto the set and onto the scene to make sure that they're integrating into our culture and climate most appropriately, most efficiently, because we've got to move, right? We've got to make sure that we are getting those necessary results. We've got to make sure that we are connecting and communicating as clearly and efficiently and effectively as possible. So we develop these wonderful missions, right? We develop these wonderful visions. Sometimes we're in our notebook jotting things down, crafting all these eloquent words and making sure that we've got all of our goals aligned, making sure we've got all of our priorities aligned. We might even be practicing in the mirror. We're like, oh yeah, this is excellent. I can't wait to go deliver this. I can't wait to be a part of this. I'm going to have people so excited. Everybody's going to be rallying around this vision. Everybody's going to fully understand this mission. We've got these phenomenal goals. We've got these magnificent priorities. So, we got this big hype up inside of ourselves. We maybe even practice with some of the people most close to us, and they're like, yep, that's it. Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Oh, I can't wait till that. I can't wait to, whoa. What is that? Right? What is that? Wait, that's not the vision I had in mind. That's not the mission that I practice. This is nothing like we practice. This is nothing like we promised. What is that? I mean, what's this guy even doing? I mean, he's got this stick hanging out the window. His car's all beat up. I mean, does he even know where he's going? And so often this is what happens when we don't take the time to be intentional, to put those pieces of the puzzle together, to strike that balance, to find out who, we really have at the table to be able to carry out that vision, to be able to carry out that mission, to be able to align those goals, to be able to effectively communicate those priorities. Because oftentimes we build it up so much in our own heads, and we've had the opportunity to practice individually in our silos. But now all of a sudden, we have to disseminate this out to a team. We have to be able to communicate that very well. But oftentimes, this becomes the end product because we didn't take the time to be intentional about how we're going to craft that message, how we're going to deliver that message, how we're even going to measure that message to get the necessary results and the level of alignment that we've been seeking, that we thought we had, that we should have taken the time in the beginning to make sure that we do that, so we don't get this kind of image delivered to us. And this is sort of our rendition of how we make that happen and how we integrate the DISC profile into team building, into managing our effective teams, into leading our effective teams. It starts with the first key, and these are what we call our 5 keys. We utilize our 5 keys in everything that we do. We start with the foundational piece of awareness. And that piece, you can see in circles the whole diagram here, because that is always changing, that is ever changing. And that's one of the pieces that we also love about the DISC profile, is that it's not static, because there's going to be different components and different levels and different entry points of awareness. And we've all heard that analogy, right? We've all heard the analogy of what, that train, of the train station. When the train pulls up to the platform, some people are going to get on the train. Some people are not going to get on the train. Some people are going to get left behind. But we firmly believe is that whenever they're ready to get onto that train, we make room, we make space, and we make them feel comfortable for getting on that train. Whenever that might be. It might be a couple of stops down the line, but we have to make sure that we've got that level of awareness to be able to welcome them into the fold, because at different points in times is when we arrive, so to speak, at where we think that vision or that mission or those goals and priorities might be taking us or leading us. And so we've got to make space. And that's what we call that awareness piece. That first key is vital. We have to be able to look at ourselves, warts and all, to be able to say, hey, you know what, this is who I am, and this is what I'm bringing to the table. And we're asking others to add a little bit of that vulnerability to that. We're asking others to come to that space as open and as honest as they possibly feel comfortable doing. And that first key of awareness is vital for us.
Yeah, that's perfect, because in Kentucky they have the United We Learn Kentucky, right? And that's part of the process. We want to learn together. It's about building that self-efficacy. But before we all come to the table, like, I love the way you said, we got to see each other and see our vulnerabilities and be okay with that and accept our vulnerabilities. And that's the only way we move forward. And I think that's part of that United We Learn component, is how do we safely become vulnerable and still feel like we belong when we share our deepest vulnerabilities? Because once we share our vulnerabilities, we're also more likely to emphasize our strengths, and the ability to share those strengths is where we want to go. But before you can do that, you have to go through this process. This is critical.
Yeah, it's vital. It's necessary. And I love that United We Learn, right? And I get this vision of just a fist, right? Because being collectively together, you're so much stronger than when we're all out individually and doing our own thing in 5 different ways. But when we're connected and we're united, we're much more powerful. We're much more strengths based, and we're not looking at those deficits and don't have that opportunity to let those deficits percolate to the top, because we know that we're united in our vision. We know that we're united in moving forward. We've got this professional learning community supporting us and surrounding us to give us the confidence and build us up to be able to lead forward the way that they need us to lead. And so I love that United We Learn. That's wonderful. And that idea of being vulnerable oftentimes is associated with weakness, unfortunately, and that is what we really work hard to make sure that we turn that sort of inside out. We turn that information around, do a 180 on that idea of vulnerability being equated to weakness, and we move that into a strengths base. We move that into an opportunity base. We move that into that foundational component of that very next key of commitment, right? Because oftentimes we're asked to make a commitment, but we don't know what we are committing to. And that second key of commitment is really critical coming out of that awareness stage, because that awareness stage is about information. We're asking you for information. We're delivering information. We're providing information to be able to build that solid foundation of a team. But those team members, they have to know and feel comfortable to what it is that we're asking them to commit to. Because if any of us pulled up to your school in that previous slide, if we pulled up in that previous slide looking like this, and you're going to be like, oh, I'm not getting in that car. I need a lot more information before I commit to getting in that car. So that's why this second key is so vital, because we really got to make that opportunity to connect, find that information that people are going to need to be able to commit. They know what they're committing to. And that way we can begin to build some actionable items around what it is committing to and how we're going to get that done collectively. And Dr. Sampson, I love that word efficacy, right? And I love that idea of this collective efficacy, because that's that piece, and that's that true vital piece. I think connects a lot with one of those other educational buzzwords, infidelity, right? Because if we don't have a level of collective efficacy, meaning commitment to a shared vision, then we are not going to have that opportunity to implement any of these tools and applications with any type of fidelity. So that's where we really take these 5 keys and really start to work through them. And then that next key is participation, meaning how are you showing up? You've made this commitment, but are you following through on those commitments? And do we have that opportunity to monitor and measure the progress as we move toward those commitments? And then that 4th key of support, what's that support look like? What additional resources might we be able to provide? How might we be able to infuse some professional learning? How might we be able to bring a new technology into the fold? How might we be able to bring a different resource from maybe the State Department, or from our district office, or even from a parent resource, to be able to enhance what it is that we're trying to do? And then that 5th key is vital. That 5th key is accountability. That's where we have that shared opportunity to hold one another accountable. And accountability is not a dirty word. It's not a shame and blame. It's that opportunity to truly look and say, okay, this is where we started. This is the platform that we built. These are the commitments we made. This is how we showed up. These are some additional supports we provided. Did we reach our goal? Did we reach our goal? And if the answer is no, it's perfectly fine. And that's what a professional learning network and a professional learning community is really all about. It's malleable. It's able to move and ebb and flow. It's not a static component. But we're all looking at that target of being intentional with where we want to go, that goal. But and again, I'll go back to, that's why awareness goes all the way around the circle, and even inside the circle, because we have to be able to do that if we're going to get that level of achievement that we know our communities deserve, that our schools deserve, that our kids deserve, and that our families.
And I love how you said accountability is not a dirty word, but it's very pliable. You can move with it. It ebbs and flows, correct? So I think that's the critical part of accountability. How do we allow accountability to be this measurement that's not just something that's static? We want accountability to be something that's a fluid thing, and I think that's the critical part that you hit on for me. Because we always think accountability is only one way. Accountability is only this way.
Yeah.
And like the old saying says, everybody loves accountability, but nobody wants to be accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because now it becomes very personal, and it's a personal thing.
Yep. Yep. But if we've got and that's why I love qualifying it as shared accountability, because if you and I are in agreement that this is how we're going to move forward, then it's not a shame and blame when Dr. Sampson fails or Dr. Ross fails. Now it's okay, Dr. Sampson, what do we need to do? What do we need to adjust? Where did we miss the mark? And that's one of those pieces that I firmly believe is so readily missing in education, because we're oftentimes scared of conflict. We oftentimes don't have the opportunity to engage in conflict, but that's the nature of a team. Team is about some conflict. It's not the conflict of we're yelling at one another, but it's the understanding that we're going to have some opportunity for discourse, for productive discourse to occur and to happen, so that we can move that needle in the direction and with the people being held shared accountable to reaching that target.
Yeah, and having discourse is okay, and I love it, because now you have what I call collegial sparring, where
Yeah,
you're
right.
sparring ideas is what you're doing. You're getting better. You're honing your craft, and it doesn't necessarily have to be yelling and screaming, or like the kids would say in school. You don't have to be in your feelings about stuff, right?
That's exactly right.
So it's collegial sparring. How do we get better? I have an idea I want to throw out on the table, and it goes to vulnerability, knowing that my idea won't be the idea, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway, just to kind of see people's reaction, what their thoughts are of it. And I
Yeah.
allow people to spar with me to get me better about this concept. Maybe I have this one idea, and it actually morphs into something a little bit better with everybody's input.
Yep.
And there doesn't have to be yelling and screaming and your feelings about stuff. So I love that how you're framing that.
And can you imagine if we even set our professional learning communities up that way in the beginning? If we lay that out in the beginning, we set that standard, that this is how this professional learning community is going to behave. This is how these behaviors are going to show up. This is how this professional learning community is going to behave outside of these walls. And we set that standard around, these are the expected behaviors as professionals, as a part of this network, as a part of this community. We're going to expect discourse. I mean, I don't know how many teams. I mean, I know you have been a part of a lot of teams, Dr. Sampson, and we've been a part of some of the same teams. So I know you've been a part of a lot of teams. And I think back to many of the teams that I've been on, they've never started off with, hey, we're going to expect productive discourse on this team. We're going to expect collegial sparring on this team. Oftentimes they walk around that, or they move around that, and they shy away from that. But to your point, yeah, that's part of that vulnerability and understanding that.
And you bring people's voice, right? So you're honoring people's voice is basically what we're saying.
Yeah.
Because the worst is when people feel like their voice isn't being honored, or they don't have an opportunity to share their voice. And
that's right.
And they just kind of, everybody skirts around it. Everybody sticks to their agenda. And let's keep this train moving, so to speak, versus let's actually figure out what's going on here.
Which is, you raise an interesting point. My voice, bringing my voice and being heard. Sometimes we don't even know what our voice is. Sometimes we have an idea. Sometimes we think we know. But this, again, is one thing that I truly love about the DISC profile, is that it provides this opportunity to more adequately understand and define that voice. It gives it characteristics. It gives it qualities. It gives it behaviors, so that that voice is better understood in a room of our peers, so that that voice shows up and is heard differently in a room of our peers, so that voice is more clearly in tune in a room of our peers. And that's one of the pieces of that puzzle of putting those highly effective teams together, is understanding, yes, we all have a voice, but what kind of voice? What kind of voice am I even bringing to the table? And it peels back some of those layers, and it alleviates some of that uncertainty about okay, my voice is, I'm a little more soft spoken. I like to make sure that things are really stable and really harmonious before I speak up. But everyone's always yelling and screaming, so I never say anything because my voice never gets heard in that. And that's one of the pieces I truly love about this profile. And that's why I love the history that goes into this profile, because it gives us that opportunity to see that long tail that has been provided by this research in and around the disc. And really, I want to draw your attention here to William Martson. So William Martson in the 20s here is really the father figure, if you will, when it comes to how we currently utilize this profile, this behavioral profile. And William Martson got a lot of his work done in the lie detector field. So, it was about seeing some of those physiological changes that happen when we tell a lie. Excuse me. And so he was able to really start to frame his work around this idea of this lie detector, and is by and large seen as the advent of that lie detector. And just a real quick corny little note here too, like when Wonder Woman, her truth lasso, when she would whip that lasso, that was his one of his creations as well, because he was also really influential in the women's empowerment movement, and really seen as a spearhead even in the women getting women the right to vote, because he used a lot of this work and laid a lot of that foundation around these different types of behaviors and these different types of individuals that we show up as. And then this work just continues to build and continues to build out. And then, down here in that bottom, when you see these characters, right? The eagle, the parrot, the dove, and the owl. And, just quickly, and Dr. Sampson, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of drag you into this one real quick, if you don't mind. But what are a couple things that you think about when you think about an eagle? What immediately comes to your mind when you think about an eagle?
Freedom.
Mm.
That's my number one thing. Freedom. When I think about an eagle.
Yep. Understandable. What about a parrot? What do you think about when you see a parrot?
Talking, communication.
Yep. How about the dove? What are a couple characteristics come to mind when you see a dove?
Courage.
Okay, great. What about an owl? What are some things that come to mind when you see an owl?
Wonderment.
Yeah, right. Those characteristics just sort of are illuminated when you see those images versus just the text. And so that's where some of this work is really kind of evolving to, because this is done intentionally through some brain connections to make sure that we get more residual and long-term commitment to some of these characteristics versus just seeing the text that we used to see in some of this historical work that was done. And so you'll see some of those associations that we make connected directly to those characters, which then connects directly to some of those characteristics, right? So now, if we start to associate some of these characteristics with some of the people that we have on our team, we, as these individuals that are responsible for helping to bring and meld these teams and bring them together, make those associations much more quickly and are better able to operationalize and systematically put these behaviors to work, so to speak. And that's why I really love that idea. So thanks for playing along with that, Dr. Sampson. That's great, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And let's see where you were with some of those, right? Let's see how you landed on some of those. All right. So you got this D over here. That's more that eagle. You've got some of these characteristics, some of these behaviors that make up that eagle, that more direct, very results oriented, very firm, strong-willed, somewhat forceful. And the word that you used was freedom. Right? You begin to associate that freedom in that quadrant there. You begin to associate that freedom with that eagle, and you almost begin to picture that eagle kind of overlaying that quadrant there. And then we move to the right there with that influence, that parrot, right? You said that talkative or that communicator, right? That opportunity, that outgoing, very enthusiastic, optimistic, very high-spirited, very lively, right? You start to see some of those characteristics. Yeah. We start to see the parrot almost coming out from the background there, right? And then you move down. Let's move down to the bottom right quadrant there with our S's or our doves, right? You said someone that is very courageous, right? Very even-tempered. Right? Somebody that is almost stoic in nature, that almost gives this aura of confidence, because that dove is just so majestic sometimes and able to, but because of the levels of humility. because of those levels of being tactful, because of that idea of, you know what, harmony is courageous. It's easier to live in that disarray and that dysfunction, and it's much more difficult to create that harmony and be courageous in those spaces to create and craft that harmony, intentional harmony. And then over there in that owl, you know, that last quadrant in our C quadrant, very analytical, very reserved. What was the word you used for the owl?
Curious.
Yeah, right.
Very
curious.
Yeah.
Very curious, right? You've got this opportunity for this owl to be very analytical and when you're curious, you often ask a lot of questions. And sometimes those owls, you know, they ask these questions and people are like, why are you asking so many questions? Would you stop asking so many questions? But that owl is using that curious superpower to be able to deduce as to exactly how they're going to deliver these results that you're looking for.
Mm.
And so that curiosity is that owl's superpower when it comes to the behaviors. And what this also does is it also helps us depersonalize it. So if Dr. Sampson is an I and he is outgoing, he's very energetic, he's very enthusiastic, oftentimes optimistic. It's the behaviors that we're talking about. We're not talking about Dr. Sampson as Dr. Sampson. We're talking about the behaviors that show up. And earlier, you know, you said something about an agenda, right? And we talked and a lot of times we you know, especially in team, we have an agenda. Mm-hmm. You know what? That agenda has a behavior. Mm-hmm. We have to have, and this is what another thing that I truly love about this process, right? Once we get to peel some of the layers back and get to work and roll up our sleeves and really start to put the rubber to the road, so to speak, our agenda has a behavior. And so what do we want to accomplish in this meeting today? Are we brainstorming? If we're brainstorming, guess what? Bring me that parrot energy. I want all your energy. I want you to brainstorm. I want you to come up with as many ideas as you possibly can. You know what? We had some things go on in our last meeting. This next agenda is going to be all about creating harmony. How are we going to find that stability and balance again? How are we going to work through some of this uncomfortable discourse, some of this uncomfortable conflict? We have to find some harmony. So we're going to be very dove oriented in our next meeting. So those behaviors that come across as very forceful, strong-willed, and dominant, we don't have space for that in this meeting. Let's hold on to those meetings when we're talking about results and how we're going to drive results. But for this meeting, or even for this segment of our agenda, even segments of the agenda have behaviors. And the better our teams are able to coalesce around these kind of characteristics and around these kind of behaviors, the better off they're going to be able to get the necessary outcomes that we're seeking. And there, I'll take you all the way back to that slide before that hoopty slide, when they had the vision and mission on there. That's the idea of being intentional with that vision and mission. That's the idea of building that coalition of a professional learning community to do and deliver the necessary goals and priorities that we're asking them to deliver. But until we get the opportunity to figure out who we are, awareness, key one, we can't ask them for their commitment because they're still questioning. We can't, they don't have quite enough information yet. What are we asking them to commit to? And what kind of person are we kind of bringing, what kind of behaviors are we bringing to that mix? And so we've got a really good opportunity to dive into that. And this just sort of breaks that back just a little bit further for us. So when you start to look on these vertical and horizontal axes, right? Along that vertical axis to the left there, you've got your D's and your C's, much more task-oriented individuals. So our eagles and our owls, much more task-oriented when it comes to their behaviors. You know, a D is probably going to have some Post-it notes with little check marks next to those Post-it notes, and they're going to call that organized. And our C is going to be our spreadsheet kind of individuals. They're going to take that opportunity to really dive into these spreadsheets. They're going to take that opportunity to put details. They're going to know those formulas. And they're going to look at that D and say, yeah, you got that done, but did you get it done right? And how many times did it take you to get it done? And the D's going, you know what? The task was to get it done, so I got it done. So those eagles and those owls on that left side are much more task oriented, and over on the other side, on that vertical axis, our I's and our S's, much more people oriented, much more people centered. They have an opportunity to engage with individuals and see people as the primary focus of what it is they're trying to accomplish. And our doves are going to ask about the families. Our doves are going to ask about who's going to be impacted by this. What's that ripple effect really begin to look like? Our parrots up in that top right quadrant, they're going to start asking, what is it how much more energy can we bring to this? They're going to be our cheerleaders. They're going to be out there just waving the flags. They're going to be out there offering that levels of support, maybe not knowing all the information, but they're bringing that energy. They're bringing that vibe to the table of saying, hey, I'm here for you. I may not know why I'm here for you, but I am definitely here for you, and I'll be your number one fan as long as I'm standing next to you. So you infuse that energy and you bring that vibe. And then along our horizontal axes there, at the bottom part, our C's and our S's are a little more introverted, a little more laid back, little more methodical as they approach these tasks, but they're going to be a little more introverted. They're not going to have that extrovert kind of energy like our D's and our I's up top, and like our eagles and parrots there. They're going to be a little bit more reserved in their focus, but our eagles and our parrots are going to be much more outgoing, much more willing to sort of dive in. You've heard the phrase jumping in with both feet, right? And they just jump in and then maybe ask questions later, where our C's and our S's are going, you idiots, I can't believe you jumped right off of that into the deep end and you didn't even know how to swim yet. And so you get this opportunity to see how it all interplays. You get the opportunity to see how each of these styles interacts and connects and supports one another even. But here's the thing about this profile. We are all four of them. We are not ever just one specific style. We are never pigeonholed into being an eagle, a parrot, a dove, or an owl. Each of our accomplishments or each of our achievements or each of our results, each of our priorities behaves in a certain manner and is expected to show up in a certain way. And if we're not delivering it in that manner where it's going to be received and our audience is going to be receptive, you're going to have that image of that beat up car just rolling randomly down the street because we thought we had our vision completely crafted. We thought we had our mission right on point, but we did not take the time to put the pieces of the puzzle accurately together because we didn't take the time to really get to know ourselves and then take the time to really get to know our people. And we've got to be able to make that space and make that time because like we said in the beginning, organizations are people. Organizations are made up of people, which means they're made up of behaviors. And those behaviors ebb and flow each and every day.
Yeah. So now I can kind of see how the conflict occurs in a team, in a PLC, because you have various agendas when you talk about a PLC. So you can have vertical alignment about data. You can have a PLC about student social emotional learning. You can have PLCs about families. You can have PLCs about various things. And for each topic or each agenda, you're not going to respond in the same way.
Yep.
I might be an eagle when we talk about the data. Somebody else might be a dove when we talk about the data. But when we talk about community engagement strategies, I might be an owl, a little bit more curious about it. And somebody else who was typically a dove, they're a little bit more outspoken about it. And so your personality kind of changes based off of the topics of interest. Is that what you're saying?
You're exactly right. And the only thing that I give a little pause is when you say the word personality.
Okay, there we go.
These are not personality assessments.
Okay.
These are behavioral profiles.
Behavioral profiles. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So my behavioral profile changes according to the topics of discussion. And usually in schools, if you have an agenda to push, or in a district, if you have an agenda to push,
yes,
you find a coalition of like-minded people.
Exactly.
Right? And then you push that agenda, and then your next agenda comes along. You're thinking, okay, these like-minded people
Mm-hmm.
were on board with that agenda, but it's a totally different topic
Exactly.
and it doesn't resonate with them.
Exactly.
You're like, wait, what happened to all my allies? Where'd you go? It's not that
And
your
you
allies
you were
left.
that dude with that stick hanging at that walking stick sticking out the window, driving down the street with one hand, bobbing and weaving, trying to make sense of it all.
Yes. Oh man, this is great. This is great. This is great.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
instead of worrying about pushing agendas,
Mm-hmm.
you have to figure out where people are within the various topics of discussion
Yep.
that happens inside of a district and inside
Yep.
of a school.
Yes.
And you don't try to cherry pick people to push forward a specific agenda.
Mm-hmm.
You try to figure out where their strengths are.
Bingo.
Oh wow, this is amazing.
Bingo.
This is amazing.
And Dr. Sampson, you were hitting so many nails on the head, right? Because I didn't mention any of those things that you just mentioned, the SEL, the vertical alignment, the communities and schools. I didn't mention any of those. You allow yourself to go there. And that's the magic and beauty and that I love that this brings, is that those synapses start firing.
Mm.
And then you start making those connections back to what it is we're trying to do and how we're trying to accomplish that in our schools.
Mm.
I never once said those initiatives that you laid out on the table, but you make that association and look at our team dynamic. And now you're starting to say, okay, how can we move this agenda forward on a strengths-based approach to make sure that we have the necessary components and pieces to get and deliver the results that we're asked to deliver, or that we're asking to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, that's exactly what this embodies, right? What do you see in this? What do you see in this picture? How many people do you see talking?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How many eyes are wandering?
Mm-hmm.
When you start to think about these effective and truly high-performing teams, Kentucky's an amazing basketball program with a deep lineage in success. I don't think there's anybody out there in this sports world, even outside the sports world, that would look at Kentucky basketball and scoff at it.
Right.
They are definitely one of the elites, and for a long time we're the elite.
Right.
And so when you think about this idea of bringing these 5 young men together, there's one voice. There's one voice. There's no doubt that these 5 young men are 10 times the athlete that coach is. There is no doubt that when they go into this huddle, they absolutely know without a doubt who that leader is. But now, if we've got this leader now, he's got to be able to deliver. He's got to be able to connect with each and every one of these superstar young men to be able to say, this is how I need you to show up, because these are the results that we're going to need to get. Now, it's not a Jedi mind trick. It's not a mind control thing. And he's not taking away any athleticism. He's enhancing and empowering the athleticism that they're bringing to the table. He's giving them the opportunity to be the superstars that they are, because he's assembled this team, not knowing how they're all going to connect together, but he knows that there's a common goal. He knows that there's common results that there's going to need to be delivered. And so the coach fully understands when he calls this huddle that we are each going to be able to go into this huddle. When we leave this huddle, we understand our goals, we understand our priorities, we understand our mission, and we fully understand our vision. And Dr. Sampson, exactly what you talked about, if it's an SEL component or if it's a communities and schools component, we've got these amazing athletes that we can compile and bring to this team and continue to build around. But are we allowing them to show up as their best selves, because we truly know how to empower them and truly know how to build that collective efficacy the same way you're seeing in this picture? And that's by and large what this profile is also about, is building this. It's crafting that vision. It's building that alignment and then being able to champion that execution. Oftentimes we get it backwards. Oftentimes we start by executing, and then we go back to the drawing board about, we forgot to do this and we forgot to do this. Well, having a profile like this, having a behavioral profile like this, helps us understand, where are we on helping to craft a vision and communicate that vision? Where are we on our building alignment and making sure that we have clarity and dialogue and inspiration around alignment? That middle part is oftentimes so overlooked, but is so vital to that third piece of championing execution. Do we have the momentum? Do we have the structure? And are we eliciting and soliciting feedback to make sure we can make the necessary adjustments so that we don't continue to bump our heads against the wall, so that we can continue to move the needle and push ahead? And, oftentimes we go back to Tuckman, right? We go back to this forming, storming, norming, performing. Anytime that you're going to bring a team together, they're going to start off down here in the forming. They're going to go through that storming. And that's what you talked about, Dr. Sampson, with those agendas, right? Those folks that are bringing those individual, personal, sometimes they have an axe to grind, and they won't ever let that team move out of storming. They will make sure that that team stays there because their agenda is to cause chaos. And they are very, very good at it. And unfortunately, unless we've got an opportunity to take an introspective look at those behaviors, push those behaviors away, allow those good qualities and characteristics to sort of come through to continue to lift up, to be able to move us into that norming phase. And let's go back to that train analogy, right? Just like we said, we got to allow people to get on at multiple stops down the line. Well, guess what? We got to allow people to get off too, because some people are going to figure out this one is just not for me. This is not what I'm ready to ride with. This is not where I'm ready to go. So I'm just going to get off at the next stop, and I'm going to watch this team just continue to move down the track. So when we talk about this forming, if you're going to form a team and you're going to really look at how you bring this team together, this is sort of our brief little infomercial here. We take this and we do it in 6 sessions. We take this 6 sessions. We walk these teams through this process and really get them through that forming, storming, norming, performing phase, and get them that level of understanding, that level of sustainability by working backwards through our 5 keys. And you'll see that there, that awareness, commitment, participation, support, accountability, and then that final stage of sustainability. And so how do you merge all of this? Those Venn diagrams are perfect for giving us that visual to be able to see that, right? That me, the you, and then there's us. And that us is really where that magic happens. That us is really where we get dynamic with our teams. And this is what I love. This is one of those huge ahas. Anytime we've got the opportunity to deliver one of these sessions and this slide comes up, people, it's almost to a T. There's a collective sigh in the room. And then you see the light bulbs. And then you see oh, that's why. Because we've had the opportunity to raise that level of awareness. We've had the opportunity to really just sort of dabble in commitment. We haven't really asked for commitments yet, but we will after you see this slide, right? Now we've got an opportunity to do what we call meeting people where they are. And now you've got enough information just to be dangerous, not to be manipulative, but just to be dangerous. And so now if I'm a C, let's say I'm Jerome Patterson down here in this C range, and I'm communicating with Austin Powers up here. And Austin Powers is this high energy, hyper optimistic, but I'm this C, much more reserved. Remember our vertical and horizontal axes, right? Introverts, extroverts, task-oriented, people-oriented. And I'm Jerome Patterson, and I'm like, you know what? I've got this great spreadsheet for you. And Austin Powers is up here saying, spreadsheets? Man, I've never created a spreadsheet in my life. Can you tell me more about this spreadsheet? And our Jerome Patterson's down and go, no, I just need to tell you about these details. This is not the spreadsheet that matters. It's the details that matter. No, I just want to learn about the spreadsheet. And so you start to see how these dynamics come into play. But here's the other thing that I love about this profile as well. You begin to see why you click with some people much more quickly than you click with others. And I don't mean click like standoffish. I just mean someone that's easier to talk to. Somebody that really just understands you, or they just get you because you have behavioral characteristics that are very similar. You have certain characteristics and behaviors that show up that sort of attract or bring you into that fold. But as you mentioned, Dr. Sampson, we have to be careful of groupthink. I don't want everybody to look like me, walk like me, talk like me. I need to make sure I've got a dynamic team. I need to make sure I'm getting all of these perspectives. I need to make sure I'm being inclusive. I need to make sure that I've got all of these dynamics represented if we're truly going to deliver high performing, if a team is truly going to be high performing, delivering the results and accomplishments and achievements that we're out to seek.
So I got a quick question for you on that.
Yeah.
I have a real quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing the sessions, the 6 sessions that you put up there, how
Mm,
you walk people through those sessions.
mm,
And I know from the adult side, this is great. What about from the student side? When your
mm,
PLC says, "Hey, we want our kids to be able to identify
mm.
their own voices and who they are," and
Yeah.
usually we have kids working in station rotations, or they're doing some group work together, or there's some um, conflict in the
Mm.
classroom, and they don't know why there's conflict, right? The kids
Right.
don't know
Right.
because they don't know each other at a deeper level like this. So, is
Mm.
this even possible for from the student side of things as well?
Yeah. There. Do you mean a specific profile? Is that what you mean, or?
Can students take the same profile and go through the same sessions as adults,
Yeah,
or is
similar,
this
similar, similar, yes, but not the same profile. This is validated along adult behaviors, this particular profile. But yes, there is now a student profile that we offer to be able to get a good. Um, I don't want to use the word playbook, but I just did, so I'll stick with that. To get a good playbook around how this student behaviors show up. But then here's one of the cool things with that: it offers a supplemental guide for parents, and it offers a supplemental guide for the teacher on how to work best with this student that is exhibiting these kind of behaviors. But here's one of the pieces of that puzzle as well, Dr. Sampson. When we craft a lesson plan, again, those that lesson plan, just like that agenda we talked about, has components of these behaviors that are going to be exhibited in and around that. So if we take the time to unpack some of these behaviors with our students, and we begin to lay out those expectations for these components of that lesson delivery, we begin to lay out the norms for shared accountability. Now, Dr. Ross, you were exhibiting these very dominant behaviors during our more harmonious section of our lesson. Now, we agreed that we were going to go through this lesson in this manner, but these behaviors over here are running counterintuitive to what we're trying to accomplish. Dr. Ross, do you think you can really walk that back a little bit for us? It's a fully different conversation. And sit down, be quiet. You're too disruptive. You're doing it again. Stop making this all about you. It's a very different conversation that we're able to have with our students and our kids now.
and I love the fact that you say that there's a supplement for the parents and for the teachers, because it allows us as the adults to communicate with the students, and the students feel like, hey, somebody's hearing my voice. They're
Mm-hmm.
understanding me now.
Yeah.
And we might be at opposite ends of of the communication spectrum here, but the
Yep.
fact that we are trying to learn more about you and who you are as an individual, I think that that's going to go a long way.
Right. Right. And again, behaviors change.
Mhm.
You just because you may take this profile and you land in the S quadrant, you may very well come back in 2 years and that profile is moved now more to the I, because maybe you changed positions, maybe you changed schools, maybe you now are holding a different role. Maybe now you've moved into administration, and so now your behaviors are much more D like. Maybe you've moved now into a counselor role, so now your behaviors are much more S like. Maybe you've moved into a data role, so now my behaviors are much more C like. It's malleable, right? It moves and morphs and changes with us because our behaviors change depending on circumstances and situations. It's not a static profile, and that's why I kind of gave some pause when you said personality.
Mhm.
Because if you have an MBTI, you're taking Myers-Briggs, that's a pretty static assessment. An IQ is a very static assessment. The DISC profile is not meant to be static. It's not meant to put us in a box.
Mhm.
Hence the circle. It's an ever-changing, no beginning, no end. Is an opportunity for us to be able to be all of these different styles at different times and different circumstances and situations.
And that's how PLCs are, right? PLCs are never, there's not a static moment in a PLC.
Right.
Things are constantly moving. You're constantly looking to improve. And when you look at any state entity, any district in Kentucky, everybody has a continuous improvement plan.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this helps drive that process. I love it. This is
Yep.
just another tool to help drive that process. So this is great for school boards, for admin teams.
Yeah.
This is great for the Kentucky Department of Education departments,
Mm-hmm.
inside of their departments, right?
Yes.
Because
Yep. Right on.
everybody, as I'm thinking about Kentucky Department of Education, everybody's coming from different districts from across the state, and their districts all did things a little bit differently because of the localities. But now
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
at the state functioning as one team.
Mm.
Now, who are these people? Who are
Mm.
you? I want to learn more
Mm.
about you as an individual. Oh, this
Mm.
is this is amazing. I love it.
And how valued would you feel? How
Yes.
valued would you feel walking into that room knowing that they truly do want to know more about me before we just dive right into the meat of it?
Hmm.
Before we even talk about results, before we even talk about achievements, before we even talk about accomplishments, let's work on that awareness key first. Let's get to know each other so that we can be that high functioning, high performing team. So that we can move from being that hoopty bobbing and weaving down the road into a very high performing, high stakes, high speed, making sure we are fully aligned, making sure we are on one accord, making sure we can make the necessary adjustments in a quick real time, making sure that we have behaviors set out, expectations, goals, priorities, and now we're moving right down the track. We're right in alignment. Now we're looking at championing execution very differently than a guessing game. It's not a guessing game. There are too many things at risk. There's too many things at stake that we have to be able to be on that same page, but we have to be able to be intentional about getting on that same page, being aligned in our efforts, understanding what those behaviors are that we're expecting to show up so that we can play to strengths instead of trying to work and build our silos all the way to the ceiling, instead of delivering a vision that's miscommunicated, working on a mission that's misunderstood, goals that have no metrics, priorities that don't align to those goals. And too many times and too often, that's what we see. And the lack of beneficiaries of our adult behaviors are the students. They're the ones that get impacted by us not taking the time to truly unpack ourselves, to truly unpack our teams so that we can be cohesive in our collective and be intentional about the targets we're trying to accomplish.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's it. That's it. That's exactly what we need in a PLC. You laid it out beautifully. This has been absolutely a
Mm.
master class for us, Dr. Ross. We are so appreciative of you being here. Uh, Tell us a little bit about how to use technology
Mm.
to engage your communities. How are you guys
That
using
piece,
this level
right?
of technology?
Love that piece. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I think every room I walk into has a smartphone sitting right next to their computer, right on their hip, right on their lap, wherever it is. So we really want to continue to stay engaged. So one of the things that we ask, right, first is awareness. You said it right. It's a masterclass in understanding and building and focusing our PLC focus. That's the awareness piece. Well, here's the commitment piece. If you want to learn more about this, if you want to take a little deeper dive and maybe get some more conversation going, understand how we can really get into this, I'll ask you to make that commitment, right? So text the word Kentucky. Text the word Kentucky to 614-502-2992, and it'll go through a series of text prompts, and we'll get you locked in, we'll get you engaged, and we'll get that opportunity to have some further conversation about how this might apply for your department, for your school board, for the Department of Education as a whole, for superintendents cabinets, for our our family engagement teams, for our PLCs, for our PLNs, all the way across the board, all the way across the board.
Yeah, and I love how you're doing that. So you're leveraging the technology to engage people at a personal level.
Yep.
And so if I'm a school district or the Department of Education or a community member, we can use something like this, a text feature, to engage our school members, to engage
Absolutely
our
right.
kids, to engage. So I'm loving the fact that you're modeling this for us.
Yep.
So folks can just use that number, text it Kentucky and see what happens and kind of go through the process.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then you can kind of see how it works. And then you can also adopt a similar type of process in your district, in the State Department. But you'll get a plethora of resources from Dr. Ross when you do this. And it's going to kind of walk you through how this process works. So I'm loving that you're going to model that. We don't have enough time to kind
Yeah,
of go
right.
on the back end to kind of show people all this stuff. But once they do it, they'll be able to go through the process themselves to see how do we connect with our community at a broader level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this is all about. So I am absolutely loving this. We could be here for hours talking about this.
Right
I
on.
know we're almost out of time here, but this is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, I can't say enough. Thank you enough for bringing me into this space. I obviously I enjoy talking about this. I got a passion for it because I see it work. I see it at work. I see it work. Even personally, I've had people come and tell me this saved my marriage. I'm like, hey, okay, all right, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you know, some folks are really in tune with that and really appreciative of that. So I'm a firm believer, and I know it works. I see it work,
Yeah.
and it is a wonderful, engaging process.
Yeah, nothing's more committing than a marriage, right? So, and I think about schools as well. So, in our profession as educators, we are committed to helping kids.
Right.
We are committed to helping families. So we put in 30, 35, 40, 45 years into this thing before we retire. So we have a commitment to that. So I love that analogy that you made. It's like a bond, a commitment, a marriage. And sometimes you need the tools to get through some of the day-to-day stuff. And we've all been down these moments where it's, I'm in year 15 and things are just, man, oh God.
Right.
I'm in year 25 and it's getting tough. But we have tools available now that can help us out with this. And I love that you brought these tools to us.
Man, you raised so many interesting points, even in just that closeout. I wish we had time to unpack that, even, especially with so many teachers so stressed, especially with so many educators ready to leave the profession, especially with so many people just on that tipping point of, you know what, is this really for me? Oh,
yeah.
Man.
So how can folks get more information from you? See more of this stuff, because we have teacher shortages. And districts are trying to figure out how do we keep teachers from bouncing out on us.
Exactly.
So how can folks get in contact with y'all?
Yeah. If you just text that Kentucky to that 614-502-2992, definitely make sure we will get you all the information that you need to contact us, to make sure that we can either stay in contact, through. Oftentimes what we do is we just push things out. Right. We'll push out. We've got see, here I go. We've got this wonderful yoga instructor. She's all about mindfulness. And she shot these wonderful videos for us. And they're very associated with each of the styles. We'll just push out one of those videos. And it's a mindful moment. And it takes 2 minutes out of your day to put you in a sense of harmony, in a sense of peace around your specific style. And so sometimes we'll just push that out. You know, whether you engage with us or bring us, you know what I mean? It's that opportunity to build a network. It's that opportunity to build community. It's an opportunity to connect around relationships and an opportunity to grow toward a common good. And I think that's a hugely validating piece in this work for us, is that, text this number, we'll get you locked in. We'll get you dialed in. We'll get your information. We'll do some exchanges, to see if you do want to go down the DISC profile path. But every now and then, we'll just push out a quick little mindful moment for you. Hey, enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's part of this whole series with equity and access. So providing folks with access, and with that access, you have choice.
Yep.
About how you want to engage. But I don't ever want somebody to say, we did not have access to information. We weren't provided with equitable opportunity to learn. So we're going to provide as many learning opportunities as possible, as many professionals out there as possible, all of these great speakers, all of these great leaders that are out there. We want to provide those services to the great folks of Kentucky. And I'm sure the teachers, the educators there, the families there, the communities there are all going to love this. So thank you again, Dr. Ross. We
Yep,
really
thank you.
appreciate everything that you bring to the table for us. We are so grateful and so thankful. I know we went over time a little bit, but that is what it's all about, is the power of learning. So thank you so much.
Understand. Thank you very much for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, man.
Yep,
Good to see
no
you.
problem. And thank you once again, Department of Education, for Kentucky Department of Education, Dr. Tucker, Dr. Tucker's there, Dr. Sweeney's there, all of that great team for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are so thankful for the opportunities you provide for the kids in Kentucky.
You got it. Anytime. Good to see you.